Hey everyone, it's time for my first tutorial on gearblocks. I've done a bunch on Scrap Mechanic on how to build different things and stuff, but I haven't done many on this. I've done some build videos working on the Peach and whatnot, but I've finally managed to make a simple leaf spring design that I actually like and that actually works. First of all, I don't have my headphones plugged in, so you might hear a little bit of game noise through the microphone. Hopefully not. By the way, it's also 11 at night when I usually record in the morning, so just kind of bear with me. Either way, as you can see, it is pretty simple. For this specific design, you do need to turn off the collisions, and oops, that's not what I wanted to do. You'll need the builder tool, which is this one, and then disable the prevent interpenetration thing, and then you'll want the oops, come on, you'll want the parts collision one as well, so you can turn the collision off on at least the middle parts that we'll get to. And then there's one more step that I haven't done yet, but I figured I'd wait to do it until I'm recording. I've also realized that the page is way too wide, but whatever. First of all, grab whatever part you want for the leaf spring kind of thingy itself. I decided to use the two-hole and plate horizontal, which is that thing. So we'll grab one of those. And then for the length, I put let's just grab this wheel. The computer does not like having all this stuff just sitting around. Either way, for the length, I just based it on the wheel and made it overall the same length as the wheel. Oops, don't delete that. But either way, it ended up being 4 long on each of them. So grab your plate with the 2 holes in it and make it 4 blocks long, and make sure its collision is turned off. We'll also want an axle, a couple axles, but I'm just gonna load in the one, turn off its collision as well. We will need the torsion spring block to axle, turn its collision off. No, actually, its collision can stay on. I tend to turn all the blocks collisions off because it makes building so much easier. Not having to worry about spacing and whatnot, because bulky messes like this is what happens when you leave collision and stuff turned on. It makes it really big and complicated. Either way, so we've got our 2-hole horizontal bar, torsion spring, axle to block, we've got a gusset, and then an axle. The torsion spring and gusset don't need collision turned off, but the bar and the pin or axle do. The next thing I would suggest using is the 2-plate and axle. Again, it doesn't need to have collision turned off, but if you want to, you can. We need a half-rounded beam. At least for the way I'm doing it at the moment, this is needed. You could just put longer shackles and then put this bar through the frame rail. But again, this is just how I'm doing it at the moment. It's still I literally finally just got this working, so I'm still in the prototype design. I haven't made it look better or anything yet. So we need these things, and then we need a plate that is at least 1 by 2. And again, it does not need collision turned off. So what we're going to do is stick that in there, stick that on there, as normal, like you always would. And then the other end is going to get the 2-plate axle thing. And then on the bottom, we put our plates. So, and then we put the other axle here, and then our half round, or frame rail, or whatever. If you don't turn the collision off for these, it can bind a little bit, but since the collision has to be off for this at the moment, it shouldn't be too bad. It's only when it bends backwards and the shackle goes backwards that'll be an issue. And which is why I'm using, or hence I was going to say, hence why I'm using these, is with it having a higher spot, it won't bind on the axle. But either way, now that you have one of these, make sure that that end can rotate and then that can rotate. And then, oops, we lock it. So there's 1/2 of our leaf spring. Now we duplicate it and flip it around. This side, you do not want the top to rotate. One side you want the top to rotate, and then the other side you do not. I'm actually going to go like this really quick and duplicate the axle so it's all kind of fresh. So now you'll want to take the axle from your vehicle. I would recommend doing it pretty much everything you would, but just the bare axle. So get the output for your drive shaft in place, put your wheels where you want them, and then build your axle, and then go to the leaves. Anyway, so now that we have the two halves, this half not rotating goes to the front, or the middle. If this is a front axle, it'll go towards the back. So the non-rotating top side goes to the middle, I'll say. And then the part that does rotate goes towards the outside, or the end of the vehicle, sorry. So rotate, solid. The bottom rotates on both. Now comes the slightly pain in the butt part. One, I forgot how far in I put these. I think I did them there. I can figure it out in a moment. Either way, so now you put your leaf on the axle, but make sure the spring sticks out on both sides, so only the bar and the axles are touching or colliding, whatever. And then hover over the bar and hold shift and right mouse button just to make sure that these aren't attached to either axle that they shouldn't be. And then I like to come in here just ever so carefully and do the same thing on the axles, just to make sure nothing's attached to something it shouldn't. So either way, I'm going to throw these on the truck really quick so I can get everything lined up again properly. Okay, yeah. It looks like I put it so that the gusset is all the way out, which means the leaf spring is 2 blocks in. I'll throw this axle back on. The part that I am going to last is putting shocks on it instead of using the shock option on the spring, just to make it look a bit better, more realistic, I guess. So let's lock that into place, and that, oh, I'm actually going to leave the chassis side unlocked, but I'm going to lock all of the axle side bits. Okay, and now I need to make sure they're not attached to each other again, so I'll just fast forward this part really quick. Okay, and that should be it. Take this wheel back off really quick just so we can see. To attach it temporarily, I just put a bar across, a plate across the frame rails and over to attach. But like I said, normally you would use like the actual frame rails for the upper part or something, or a hanger that hangs off like this. If I were to do it this way, I would likely put a gusset right there just to make it look a little better. And who knows, maybe this is how I will release the T2. Just with the suspension the way it is. Either way, mount it to the chassis however you want. And then there you go. You've got your basic, simple leaf spring suspension mounted and ready. All of them should rotate the same way. So, for now, I'd recommend using just low numbers for each. When I'm first building something before actually tuning, I usually go double the spring rate for the dampening, or the damping, sorry. I always say dampening for some reason, but the damping, I always do double the spring rate. It seems to work good enough for the main build testing. But you'll want to adjust the trim angle. The torsion springs have, thankfully, the ability to be adjustable. So let's just make something really quick as the fan on my computer speeds up and gets really loud. Hopefully the audio processing is cutting it out. Is that long enough? Oh, plenty. Okay, so I'm going to grab a spring. That, and then let's just grab that. Okay, so the thingy, the trim angle, notice how it's straight down? When we adjust it, let's go up to 20, it moves by about 20 degrees, I think it is. I think it's in degrees. Yeah. So the trim is however many degrees you want it to be in. So I found that at the moment 20 degrees works perfectly. So I just copied it and put it on all of them. So all my springs are set to that. If it sucks the axle up into the body or whatever, instead of pushing it down, try making it negative instead of positive. But I'm assuming doing it this way, it'll be positive every time. Either way, the next step I wanted to do, like I said, was make it so that it is proper shock absorbers, rather than these doing the damping, because these doing the damping doesn't make much sense. So I'm going to, yeah, that's a perfect space. Let's grab a socket and axle, a Of course, whatever you're specifically building will make it different on how you connect things specifically, or where, whatever. Either way, let's grab a small coilover, get rid of the spring rate, and then we'll go with the damping and copy. I need to copy this as well. Okay, there we go. And now, I guess I could just copy this. Put that one back up there. Shorten that one. Put it to the axle. Grab the half-rounded beam. Duplicate it and then put it on, and now we have the leaf spring and a shock absorber, like it would in real life. You also might want to put like slapper bars, torsion bars. I'll show you one in a moment. Come on, start. There we go. I keep forgetting what button it is. So, you see how it twists really bad like that? That's just what leaf springs do, except with how we have to do it in this, it is much, much worse. This is why lifting your truck with blocks is a bad idea, because it makes that worse. And look what it does to the drive shaft. But either way, we can see that it works quite well. And it even surprisingly has a little bit of articulation, like it can flex a little bit. Hopefully the engine note isn't too loud, but if I sit like that, you can see it actually flexes how it should. Which I was kind of worried it wouldn't. But yeah, that is that. Simple, decent, proper looking leaf springs. If you've got a bigger vehicle, you can use bigger bars to make it look like it has a thicker leaf pack in it. You could go like this, take a plate, set it to false, and then go like that on both sides. Paint it black. Paint those while I'm down here. And now, whoops. And now it looks like the leaf spring is a little bit thicker in the middle, as they are, because they're progressive. There's a big, long, soft one, and then as it gets to the middle, there's shorter, stiffer ones. And then the torsion, the slapper bar that I was talking about, would basically be something like this. It attaches under the leaf spring, and as the axle twists, come on, there we go. As the axle twists, it will rotate up and hit the bottom of the leaf spring and stop it from twisting too much. So let's put that on. It's typically only on higher performance vehicles that actually need it, like drag cars or street car or something, or muscle cars. Shift F, yes. E, Shift E. I changed it to Alt E on my newer engines, but whatever. So either way, put it in gear, and you'll see if collisions were turned on. Let's turn that thing's collision back on. like so. I do need to make the shock absorbers stiffer. The springs, the torsion springs, especially the damping, is way too stiff. I think I only made that 15. Yep. Much better. Okay. And they are a little stiff at the moment. I do need to adjust everything about them, but whatever. So, by the way, start the engine again. You'll notice the axle can't twist nearly as far now. It's still pretty bad because it's moved so far from the shackle, but we can fix that easy enough. Grab the plate and axle and stick it on the end, or just simply don't make your trim so much. It also shouldn't affect it too much, like the compression distance. It shouldn't affect it too much as long as you don't make it too thick. Yeah, that's much better. So yeah, there we go. And you can see the rear shackles there kind of moving. If I had the suspension softer, it would be a lot better. One thing I'm not sure of is how it will act with lower trim, whether the axle can go lower or not than the trim, what the trim's set to. So I'll try that in a moment. It's a little bit better. It seems like the trim does a lot for the overall height. So I'm going to lower this down one more time because it is effectively quadrupled. So now that I set it to 2, it's still going to have an overall spring force of 8. Just because of how it's set up. So remember, whatever you set the spring to, the overall strength is 4 times that. That is much better. The truck's actually riding kind of level now. The spring is level. On a real vehicle, you don't want it to ride level. You want it to have a slight bow in it. But that's fine for this. I'm not really worried. I would like to know if the trim adjusts how far it can hang down. So if I adjust all of these to, let's just go to 45, something extreme. I have a feeling that'll mainly change just how far it can move and not overall. Right now, the shocks are limiting it, but that definitely let it go lower. So let's see if it still sits at level. It's also not sitting level now, though. And the axle's actually rotated forwards quite a bit. So yeah, don't go crazy with the trim. I'm sure if you made the springs soft enough, it would be fine. But just take it normal. We're going for realism if we're doing this. Like, come on. In a game where you pretty much only use the coilovers, there are no actual leaf springs in this game. So we're kind of doing what we have to, and if we're doing leaf springs, we're doing it for realism. So yeah, that's that. I do have to modify this a bit, put the proper axle under it and whatnot, because I do think this is just going to be how the T2 is now. But this being the axle for the Jeep, like the Peach, has made me realize that the Peach is way too wide. At least I think it might be a bit wide. I need to narrow it a little bit. Either way, that is it. So hopefully this was at least somewhat easy to understand. Hopefully you're able to replicate it, recreate it, and use it for your build. And it, yeah, looks like it works pretty well. So, by the way, I need to do more testing, but before I do that, I need to go to bed, because it's almost midnight. So, by the way, as usual, if you have any tips, tricks, questions, anything you want me to check out, feel free to leave it in the comments below. As always, I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. I do weekly videos on this, by the way, so maybe check those out.